All right, so welcome everyone. You've found your way to another deep dive. We've got some really thought-provoking stuff to get into today, listener. You sent us some pretty intense material. So we've got analyses, timelines, even what looks like a snippet from someone's study guide.
You weren't kidding about a deep dive.
No kidding, right? And the question at the heart of it all seems to be, are we teetering on the edge of a full-blown economic recession? And if so, what does that even mean for all of us? We're going beyond just, surface level anxieties here. These sources seem to be pointing to some bigger underlying trends that are worth exploring.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've given us a collection of, I'd say, perspectives, and they all seem to be converging on a similar and, let's be honest, a pretty worrisome picture of where things might be headed.
Worrisome is putting it mildly, I think.
Yeah.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start by unpacking the basics. You can't talk about recession without first defining what it even is, right?
Yeah.
And everything we've looked at, all our research, keeps pointing back to that classic definition. 2 straight quarters, back to back, of negative GDP growth.
That's the textbook definition for sure.
Textbook, yeah. And here's the kicker, and this is what really got my attention. We've already had 1 quarter of negative growth, it seems.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One document puts it really bluntly. All it will take is 1 more quarter of negative growth for us to officially be in a recession. And that statement, I don't know about you, but it kind of makes my stomach drop a little. It makes it feel very, very real and very, very close.
Oh, for sure. There's a real sense of imminence there, like we're standing right on the precipice.
Right.
And it makes you stop and think, the GDP, that's the total value of everything our country produces. So 2 quarters in a row, that's shrinking. That suggests a pretty widespread economic contraction. And the language, like you said, it's so stark. All it will take is 1 more quarter. It makes you wonder, what are the things that could either push us over that edge or maybe pull us back? What kind of signs should people be looking for in their own lives, to see if this is really playing out?
Right, and it's not just about hitting that technical definition, that 2-quarter mark. It's also about the force behind it all, the momentum.
Momentum, right.
We came across this phrase, and it stuck with me. Our economic momentum is clearly taking us in the wrong direction very rapidly. And it's that word rapidly that's unsettling. This isn't some gentle slowdown. It's suggesting a sudden, forceful shift.
I see what you mean. It's like, think of a car going downhill. You can slow down gradually or you can hit the brakes hard and skid. In economic terms, rapidly negative momentum, that implies that things like production, job creation, investments, they're not just declining, they're declining at an accelerating rate. And that raises a whole other set of questions. What's fueling this rapid change? Are we seeing businesses shutting down left and right? Are people suddenly cutting back on spending? What signs of this rapid change are happening out there in the real world in different communities, different industries?
It makes you question how stable things really are, right? And then, on top of all of that, there's this other element that's introduced, and it's a bit of a curveball, I think. The term used is societal chaos. And the author makes this bold claim that all of the societal chaos that we are witnessing at the moment is certainly not going to help matters. Now, societal chaos, that's a pretty broad term. It can mean a lot of things. What does that even look like when you're talking about the economy? How does that fit into this whole picture?
It's fascinating, isn't it? It speaks to the deep connection between how stable a society is and how healthy its economy can be. The source doesn't get into specifics about what exactly the societal chaos is, but it does get you thinking. Maybe it's major political upheaval or widespread unrest, protests and things like that. Maybe it's even disruption to essential services that we all rely on. The idea seems to be that a stable society provides the foundation for a strong economy. And when that foundation gets shaky, it's bound to have an economic impact. So what comes to mind for you, listener? What kind of instability, either close to home or around the world, fits this description of societal chaos? And how might those events, according to this author, be adding fuel to the economic fire?
Yeah, it's a real wild card in all of this. And then on top of that, there's this idea that this downturn, this potential recession, it's not what people were expecting. It's kind of blindsiding everyone.
Right.
The source actually says, this is not what a lot of people were expecting. And that's really interesting to consider. It suggests there's a disconnect between what maybe the average person thought was going to happen, or even what experts were predicting, and the reality of where we seem to be headed. So why the surprise? What was everyone expecting, and what went wrong?
I think what's so intriguing here is that there might be a gap in perception. If a lot of people thought the economy was on a different track, then it could mean that some important warning signs were either missed completely or just misinterpreted. It makes you think about how tricky economic forecasting can be. So, what were people saying back in October 2023, which is when this analysis was written? What were the prevailing narratives at the time? And what happened since then? What events, what data points could have shifted the outlook so dramatically? And could this unexpected turn of events, this surprise factor, be adding to the overall anxiety and uncertainty in the economy?
It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. And it all leads up to the central warning, the prediction that's laid out. Quote, "The truth is that it appears that a lot of economic pain is ahead." Now, we have to acknowledge that this is an interpretation, not just raw data. One of the documents you sent in actually points that out, that the author is primarily offering an interpretation of events. But that doesn't make the interpretation any less concerning. So let's talk about that phrase, a lot of economic pain. What could that realistically look like based on everything we've been discussing?
Well, if you take all the pieces we've looked at, the potential recession looming,
So let's try to put it all together. We've got this potential recession, maybe just a quarter away from becoming official. We've got this strong downward pull, and it's picking up speed. We've got societal chaos out there, potentially making everything worse. And all of this seems to have caught people off guard, leading to this prediction of, well, significant economic pain. Does it feel like we're looking at a domino effect here, like one thing knocking into another and another and another, creating this downward spiral?
It does suggest that all these pieces are connected, that each negative element can make the others worse. Like, think about it. If businesses start laying off workers in large numbers, that could lead to more social unrest, which could then further damage the economy. It's like a vicious cycle. And it seems like this is exactly what the author is worried about, this kind of self-reinforcing downward trend. So what are the assumptions here? What are the specific mechanisms that are believed to be driving these connections? And what could be the tipping points, the triggers, that might accelerate this whole process?
It's a lot to think about. And it's important to remember the time frame here. This analysis, everything we've been discussing, it dates back to October 2023. So when it mentions 1/4 of negative growth already having happened, that means that quarter occurred sometime before October 2023.
Oh, that's a good point. It gives us a historical anchor for these concerns, right? We can actually look back at the economic data since October 2023 and see if the trends that these sources were highlighting have actually played out. It's a real-world test of these predictions.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the big takeaways here? What should you, our listener, be walking away with after exploring all of this material?
Well, the main point seems to be that a recession is very likely, and it could be right around the corner. It's being driven by a strong and accelerating negative trend in the economy. And on top of that, there's the added concern that social instability could make the whole situation even worse. Basically, it's not looking good, and we could be in for some rough times ahead.
Definitely some food for thought. And it really pushes us to think beyond just the day-to-day headlines and consider the bigger forces that are shaping our economic reality.
I agree. Taking a deep dive like this, examining these sources in detail, it gives us a much more nuanced understanding of the potential risks and how different factors are interconnected in the economy. It's not just about isolated events, it's about understanding the whole system.
And that brings us to a final thought for you to ponder, listener. How much weight should we give to interpretations and predictions like this? Even if they're based on careful analysis, they're still not guarantees. But they can definitely shape how we see the future, what we expect, and how we prepare. So what role should this kind of economic forecasting play in our lives, as individuals, as a society? How do we balance taking these warnings seriously with, not getting caught up in worst-case scenarios?
It's about understanding the different paths that things could take and thinking about how we might respond if certain scenarios do unfold.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, maybe even a little bit thought-provoking. And we'll be back soon with another exploration of, well, whatever fascinating, strange, and maybe even slightly unnerving stuff you throw our way.
Yeah.
Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
And as always, remember, the truth is stranger than fiction.